Hey, welcome everybody to This Week in Housing. It's Tom Ferry. It is April 10th. It's about 12:57 in the West, and we're going to be starting just in a few minutes. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're getting everybody on a little bit earlier because today we're going to talk about the housing market. We're going to talk about the word recession, and we're going to talk about job loss in the U.S. and how all of this is impacting homeowners today and real estate professionals and lenders and more. So it's going to be a powerful conversation. I'm going to check in really fast and just take a look at where we're at. Right, looks like we are live and going, Tristan, though I'm not seeing anything on this screen over here, so I might need to refresh. So if you're getting on early, thank you. We appreciate that. We decided that unlike in the past where it would be weird if you started a Broadway show starting, directly at 1 o'clock and then had everybody join in. Now we're getting everybody on a little bit early. So, hey, Carrie Perez. Hey, Willie, I see you out there. Annika, congrats. Coach Don in the house. Okay, now I'm seeing it all. Perfect. All right. So again, it is April 10th. It's Tom Ferry. Welcome to This Week in Housing. As always, I've got my great guests and co-hosts, David Childers, who is on the mortgage side and spearheading almost all of the content now for KCM, and how I, sort of kindly refer to as mentor, AKA the Oracle of real estate, Mr. Steve Harney as well. We're going to talk about some of the tough issues today, my friends. So I hope you're in a place where you can sit back, maybe have some tea, take a lot of notes, get ready to learn. And it's always step up our leadership, because that's really what this is all about. I was sharing before we started the show, just as we're waiting for everybody to get on. I have a father-in-law who passed away last October, who is a World War II vet, born and raised in Boston, and went out and set sail on the SS Cambria. And, I remember having many conversations with him about leadership. And I also remember, having a lot of conversations with my Uncle Frank, who I was just with last November, who is now, I want to say 97, 98 years old. And my mother-in-law, God bless her, who's upstairs, her eldest brother, who after Pearl Harbor, both these guys and 29 other guys basically on their street raised their hand and said, I'm in. I'm going to go serve. I'm going to go do my part. And I look at that generation as many of us do, whether it was, our parents or our grandparents or uncles or aunts, or just, you think about all the extraordinary movies and stories that we hear from that time. They refer to them as the greatest generation ever. And when I think about my Uncle Frank, who said to me, very candidly, hey, for an additional $25, rather than just going into the Navy or the Army or the Marines, I said, I'll be a paratrooper. And I'm one of the only people in the family that ever heard the story of him basically, jumping out of an airplane on D-Day at Normandy and landing behind enemy lines. And the way he describes that story, people around him dying, friends, people that had become, that band of brother that we all hear about, and him saying, I now have to step up and lead. I have to step up and lead. He didn't sign up for leadership. None of us right now watching, my friends, signed up for this. And yet, what I'm inspired by right now is how many people I see around the country, around the world, that are stepping up and leading. And you might be watching this and saying, Tom, I'm not a leader. I'm not a manager. I don't know my own company. And I'm going to say to you, my mother, who is retired, right, who's living up in Oregon, is right now sewing masks, actually with a sewing machine that she, got from my stepsister. She's sewing masks. She's leading. I think about every one of you that reached out and called a friend or sent them a text or use some of the information that we're providing on this show to educate your friends and your past clients in your sphere. You're leading. You're leading when you're sitting at the dining room table and you choose to hold, your children's hands and maybe say something you're grateful for, or a prayer or a blessing. That's a moment of leadership. That's a moment of leadership. Just like selling a house today in a more challenging environment where you have to navigate, things that you never even thought of 3 or 4 weeks ago, and yet you're doing it. You're doing it, my friend. And that's leadership. So, David and Steve and I get to talk a lot, and I'm in this dialogue with a lot of people, and I'll share this quickly, and then we'll get to the sort of the core of what we want to discuss today. And that is, right now, there's basically 3 rules for leading in a crisis. And there's a lot of books written on this. And I'm really going back to mentors of mine, men that were around in those times, and even talking to my mother-in-law who was around in that time, but in a different capacity. She was leading as well. The 3 things I know about great leaders in environments like this, number 1 is they see things as they are. They don't make it better and they don't make it worse. And that's why, doing this show and having David and Steve come on here and share screens and slides and examples and data, allowing you to do the same. Steve was reminding me the book, The Art of Leadership by Max Dupree. And he said, the leader's first job, he said, Tom, as you say, see things as they are, is the ability to define reality, right? To define reality. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some hard-hitting truths. And then how do we do the second step of leadership, which is to communicate. We need to be communicating right now, whether it's an email or video or in text or a phone call or via Zoom sessions or live on Facebook. But right now more than ever, my friends, and I'm really speaking to my real estate agents around the world. In the US, there's 1.4 million agents, right? In Canada, it's about 10%. In Mexico, it's a very similar number. What we know today is that there's very few agents that have adapted the way we need to in this environment, that we still have agents that are struggling to pivot, to make the adjustment, to just say, screw it, I'm going to go on Facebook, or I'm going to go use a product like Zoom or Google Hangouts or something else. And, here we are today talking about job loss in the US. And I know agents today, and so do you, and I don't wish ill will on them. This is a calling for them to come back. It's a calling for them to come back. We have staggering numbers of unemployment that has happened just like that in our country. And what makes me nervous, upset, willing to go care front a lot of people is I would bet we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of real estate professionals that have literally furloughed themselves. Nobody terminated them. No one said to them, you can't sell a house. No one said you can't go to work. Right? No one said, hey, there's no way you can do it. No, they furloughed themselves. And I wish for all my friends out there that just for today, you'd reach out to 5 agents in your marketplace and tell them we need them back, because we are going to get through this. I just believe right now that, like the men and women we all admire and respect and speak so highly of, the greatest generation ever, part of the solution for our economy is the greatest generation of real estate professionals that are willing to step up and get outside of their comfort zone and make that phone call. Steve Harney, you said to me weeks ago, nobody is handing you a gun. We're just saying, make calls, help people, right? Make a difference, reach out, connect, and educate people on what's happening in the market. So I want to just open with that, because this is really about leadership, my friends. So first of all, with that said, let me say welcome to David and to Steve. Welcome, guys. It's April 10th. Thank you for being on the show again this week. First of all, how we doing, guys?
Hey, thanks for having us again, Tom. As we go through the week, and our team is doing different things, writing blogs, doing research. I look forward to these times where we just get to sit down and talk about what is happening. And you made a critical point of, let's talk about the news, not good news, not bad news, just the news, and how we go out and we bring that to the market. So thanks for having me on as a part of this conversation.
Yeah, we appreciate you, my friend. The Oracle, Mr. Harney, how we doing, my friend? I have a feeling you've done about 11,000 of these podcasts and webinars in the last few weeks, as David has.
David and I have been pretty busy. There's no question as far as that's concerned, and we're trying to help as many people as we possibly can. There is a little bit of difference, but I'll tell your audience that when we're here on Fridays, this is what we know. We're talking to the best of the best.
Yeah.
Whether they be your coaches, whether they be people who take your coaching, whether people in your ecosystem, we know how good they are. And like even today's, the 3 questions we're going to be answering today, they're all tough questions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure with a different group, I would put all 3 questions in one place in one session. But I know your group, like you just said, you're calling them the arms. Your group is prepared for this. And when we go at the data, all the challenges that your clients and customers and even other agents are throwing at you about, this is the end of the world, the sky is falling.
Yeah.
And none of those three cases is that really true. So what we're going to do today is tackle the toughest issues you're going to have to tackle and give you the ammunition you're going to need to win that battle.
Thank you, Steve. And again, we're talking about stuff that, people are going to hear more and more about, certainly tragically over this weekend, over the next few days, the headlines that are going to be hitting you. And you're really, my friends, by being on this show, whether you're watching with us live or you're watching, over the weekend, you're really getting ahead of the curve. So for that, I congratulate you. That's what leaders do. So Steve, why don't we go right to the first question, which is, we've been talking about this V-shaped recovery, and a lot of people are really struggling with it. They're struggling to grasp how it could possibly go down so hard and then supposedly, is what's on a lot of people's minds, go up so high. So what's the latest right now, at least in all of the most important circles, on the recovery, specifically the V?
Okay, so anytime, and hold the slides just yet, David. I'll tell you when to put them up. Anytime here at Keeping Current Matters that wants to take, a stand or like put stuff out, we don't take, like, if somebody from a YouTube channel says, "Oh, I think this is going to happen. Oh, we got to talk about that," or somebody writes a crazy headline to get a bunch of clicks. We don't talk about that. We go to, all right, who are the really reliable sources over the years, all right, that we can look to, and what's the science behind what they're saying? If we could really line that up, we get very, very comfortable saying, yes, we don't know for sure. Asking me when the bottom's going to hit and where it's going to turn around is like asking Dr. Fauci, when is the pandemic going to be over? Yeah. We got a kind of a range, but we can't pick a date, all right? So, David, throw that up, and I'll tell you why most people, the vast majority, believe that we're going to have a V shape. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley, and we tried to add up the trillions of dollars they handle combined of the richest people in the world, but we weren't that good in math. We couldn't add that high. That's how many trillions of dollars they handle. So we have some of the most prominent, richest people in the world, depending on them for analysis. Very rarely would all three agree almost identically, but that happened this time. So they're all saying that in the second quarter, we're into this terrifying ride down. And then when we hit bottom, we're in this exhilarating ride up. Now, as we move forward, we're going to keep on looking at that, and they're going to keep on looking at it. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I don't know that it's going to be, as I said before, a ball bouncing going straight up that hard. But what we're saying is it's going to be quick going down and quick coming up. And as we get more and more data on that, we'll share that with you. But I want you to understand there's also a science behind this. Go to the next slide, David. As a matter of fact, the Harvard Business Review just came out and said, it's worth looking back at the history to place the potential impact path of a COVID-19 empirically. In fact, V-shapes monopolize the empirical landscape of prior shocks, including epidemics such as SARS, the 1968 H3N2 flu, and the 1958 H2N2 flu, and the 1918 Spanish flu. For the last 100 years, all the major pandemics, from an economic standpoint, led to a V-shaped recovery. So that's Harvard telling us, you know what? Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley probably got this right. Outside of that study, go to the next slide with John Burns. John Burns did their own study, and they found out the historical analysis showed that pandemics are usually V-shaped. Here we go. Different study, same result. Sharp recessions that recover quickly enough to provide little damage to home prices, and some very cutting-edge search engine analysis by our information management team showed the current slowdown is playing out similarly thus far. So what do we have? We have three of the major, and the only reason we're not reporting the others, those numbers are not coming out yet. Three of the major financial institutions in the world are saying we're headed for a V-shape. And the science behind what's going to happen now from a pandemic says the same exact thing. So I don't want any agent to say this is what's going to happen, because no one knows when this is going to happen. I want you to be like Dr. Fauci, the leading expert there could possibly be that your people are talking to, and they're giving them, like Dr. Fauci does, well, this is what we think is happening, and we have to be a little bit open. But the best advice I can give you now, based on what we know now, is this. And I think there are too many agents saying, well, just in case I'm wrong, I don't want to say anything. Well, if you don't say anything, the narrative is controlled by people saying, we're going to lose 25% probably in the first 3 months of value in homes. When in reality, what do surveys show? Little damage to home prices.
So, Steve, I'm so glad you brought this up. And I just want to interject for a moment that, you know, like the two of you, I have talked to tens of thousands of people, you know, just in the last few weeks. And, you know, in some cases, tens of people in a day, one-on-one in small groups. And it's startling to me how many people keep saying, this is just like 2007, 8, 9. We're going right back into it. I can feel it. My buyers are asking me, am I going to get a smoking deal? Sellers are panicking. We don't want to reduce our price. We're going to take our home off the market. And listen, I think so much of the misinformation is because of the wounds that we still feel emotionally from 7, 8, 9, 10. So can you just speak to that? Or David, thoughts on that? Just
actually, we have a whole group. You know what, David? Let's wing it. All right, let's go to the recession piece, because that's really what you're asking. Is this going to be the recession of 2008?
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
But before we go there, let me finish it up on the pricing side for people.
please.
But I love what you just said, Tom, because I got a bunch of calls yesterday. Did you see the headlines? You know, listings are down 27%. And these were agents calling me. And I was like, whoa, time out. How is that news to you?
Yeah.
So what do you mean? I said, well, 96% of the country right now is on a lockdown and they have to stay at home. You didn't think listings were going to go down?
Yeah.
When we see some of these horrific headlines coming out the next days, guys, ladies and gentlemen, take the 7 words I try to give you. Calm down, sit down, think, plan, act. When you get to the thinking line, a month from now or 45 days from now, when NAR comes out with the sales report, oh my God, the headline is going to be horrible. We know right now the headline that sales are going to be horrible, because we can't do the same thing we did. I'm not saying no houses are going to sell, but if we have 96% of the world the country on a lockdown, we're going to sell less houses than we would have if there wasn't a lockdown. All right. So of course those numbers are going to, so don't get caught up with that. And the simplest way to handle an objection for a buyer or seller on that is to say exactly that. Hey, we knew this was coming. This shouldn't be news to you. Because any logical person is going to say, oh, you know what? You're right. I didn't think of it that way. When I saw the headline, I get all crazy. All right. So what do I say to a seller right now, a buyer right now? Hey, there's less houses for sale. That means the price is going to go up. So if you're looking to buy right now, then this is the time. If I'm talking to a seller, there's less buyers. I wouldn't adjust the price because there's a lot less houses too. But you might want to negotiate. You might want to make sure that you keep that person tight, because you might not get 5 offers on your house right now. All right, and in some cases you might.
So, Steve, before we go to the recession conversation, because I know that's on the minds of everybody.
Sure.
I want to go back first. I jumped ahead of my mindset with my questions. I want to go back though first. Can you, David, we show the very first slide?
Yeah.
The one with Goldman Sachs, and we can all be off the screen. I just want them to see this slide again. Steve, you mentioned something to me when we saw just the first version of this that was just Goldman saying this. And you said something to the effect of, these men and women were managing, $1.7 trillion for some of the wealthiest people on the planet. Could you just remind people of what is the negative impact for Goldman, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley by giving their clients bad information?
Well, if you're worried about reputation, if they're giving them bad information now, and I'm not saying that their advice is going to be perfect, they might shift it too. They might say, as we're moving along, we're going to make it a little bit slightly different, but they're going to give them the best advice possible at that moment in time. And if it's not the best advice possible, they're going to lose the ability to manage that money. People are going to take their money out and invest it someplace else. A better example, I think, even is the Dr. Fauci situation.
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci can't tell us when the pandemic. He's trying as hard as he possibly can, but he's on TV every morning. You can get him at the 6 o'clock show on ABC, and you can see him at 10 o'clock at night on NBC, because he's not hiding from the fact he can't give perfect advice, because as a professional, he understands no one in the world can give perfect advice about anything. A doctor can't give you perfect advice if you have cancer. He can't tell you that this is what's going to happen. They're going to say, hey, listen, this is what could happen. This is the treatments I suggest. This is what your test is showing me right now. Let's go down to a process, and I'll hold your hand through the process. And maybe we have to change a thing here, or change a thing there, a treatment or a medication. All right. If you go to an attorney, like I said, all professionals, they don't know what the end result's going to be, but they're going to guide you to get to the best result there could possibly be. And that's what we do. So the simple answer to your question is their reputations are ruined.
Yeah.
All right. Simple answer to Dr. Fauci is worth 30 years in this industry. He knows he's going to take a hit from that one or two guys said, well, you told us it was going to be June 15th. And now it's June 16th. You were off. He doesn't care about those people. He cares about all the other people he's helping make good decisions with as they're going through the process.
I agree. So David, I'm actually going to transition to you, if I may. And by the way, I want to remind everybody as we're shooting this live, just in the last 3 shows, we've had nearly 500,000 views. And a lot of that is because you understand that what we're talking about here, yes, we may be talking to you as a real estate professional, as a mortgage loan originator, or someone in the title or escrow business, but this information is universal for everybody. So, interesting enough, we've had 1,471 people share one of these videos just in the last 3 weeks. And I would encourage you to do the same. And if you're a consumer and you're watching this right now, first of all, thank you. Know that, my organization and Keeping Current Matters together, we work with these extraordinary real estate agents around the world. And our mission is always the same, to arm them with the right information so they can serve you. Like, this isn't about causing you to try and sell when you don't feel comfortable, or causing you to buy when you don't feel comfortable. This is about making sure that our agents are the knowledge brokers, that they can help you navigate a sale if you choose to, or if it means to wait, to intelligently show you how you should do that and how to potentially time this. So for all my friends out there, if this makes sense to you, this may be something you might want to share, and then take bits and pieces of this and get it out in your social. So David, the big question right now that's on everybody's minds, and it's hard, right? But the question is unemployment and the impact of unemployment. So I'm throwing you the hard question, my friend. Give us the update and let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about that update. And it is the question, Tom. We see a lot of that coming in from members of KCM and different people that we talk to in the industry, and we know it's a question out there. So what I want to do is let's walk through and let's look at some of the numbers, and then we'll kind of discuss that. Okay. So when we start to look at this, I want to throw this graph up here real quick. This graph shows U.S. unemployment back through the 70s, if you see it on the left-hand side. And you see it kind of going along. And it really, if you look at it, we've gone through times in our country where we've had high unemployment, and certainly we know that, in our heads. But this underscores just the number of job loss that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. This shows the first 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the third week here in just a second this week. But numbers that we've never seen before. I mean, very, very high numbers of unemployment, and this graph shows that as a picture. So that is the current reality that we're living in. So if we broke that down by week, what we know is the first week, March 21st, we saw a little over 3 million people file for unemployment benefits, 3.3 million. Last week, that number was ratcheted up to 6.9 million people. And then this week, we got the number of 6.6 million people, almost 18 million people across this country signing up for unemployment benefits because they've lost their job. And that number, while we talk about it historically, to put it in perspective, during the Great Recession, there were about 8.7 million jobs lost. So the headlines are it's going to be double that. I mean, we're dealing in numbers here that are tremendous. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. I want to show you some things and compare that, but a very large number. So the question that's been coming up is, what makes that number up? Who is losing their jobs? And And we do have a first look at that. I do want to caution people that this is not reflective of this entire group. In the way unemployment is recorded and then released, it's reflective of about the first 700,000 people that lost their jobs. And I want to take a look at that and again, caution you that this is a small segment of people that have filed. But I think what we can look at as well is it should be reflective somewhat of what we should see in the future, but we're going to have to wait to get that number until the first week in May, the first part of May when that number is published, so that we can look at that across all of these numbers. So when we break these numbers down, or the U.S. Department of Labor does, and they give us that report, we see that 60%, call it 59.5% of the people filing for unemployment are working in restaurants. These are servers, these are bartenders. And we know that. We know, kind of to the point earlier that Steve made about listings, restaurants are going, some shutting down altogether, others going to take out only, and in a serious percentage of the people they employ are without employment right now. But what we know is that when the economy starts to come back, those people are going to get their jobs back. And so there are three things really that I think we want to look at in that. When is this over, this coronavirus over? When does the economy start to come back? And lastly, when do people feel like they can go out and eat in a restaurant, when they can go out and go to a ball game? Those are three things that our team is looking at right now that I don't think we have the exact answer for by any stretch of the imagination right now. So we're starting to look at that, and we'll update that as we start to get more data in and look at more. But let's go through this and let's look at it starting from the bottom and working our way up. Construction workers make up 4% of that number. And what we know, housing is positioned by a lot of things we've talked about, Tom, to pull us out of this. And we expect those construction jobs to come back as the economy comes back. And we know the need for construction is not going to go away. Healthcare office workers, these are people working in doctor's office, dentist office. I know I had a dental appointment and they canceled it. Nobody's coming together to do those things. Those jobs are coming back when we come back online. We've often talked about the pause button being pushed. And when that pause button's unpushed or play button's pushed, those jobs come back online. Child daycare workers making up almost 3%. I guarantee you those jobs are coming back. We're all at home with our kids right now. And you might even want to pay those people more for the great work they do to watch kids every day. Temporary health services, you see that at 7% there. Maybe slower to come back, the temp industry. And so, you go up retail trade, people are going to want to get back into stores. Again, answering those questions. When are we able to do that? The accommodation industry, you can see at 4%. Think of hotels and travel related services. And so that gives you perspective about those numbers and begins to start to paint the picture. And though I would caution, this is an early look of who, is being affected by this and being affected by the lack or the loss of employment. So,
David, let me just jump in here for a
ahead.
second, just to reiterate what you were saying, because I want everyone to get that. We now have, I think it's like 16 million people have lost their jobs in the last 3 weeks. It's somewhere in that ballpark, okay? So with that being the case, I want you to understand that this chart, it should not be shared out in your social media or anything like that, because it's not, we don't know. This is the first 700,000, the first to be laid off, the first to lose their jobs. We don't know if the other 60 million are going to break down this way. What we did want to show you is that in the first 701,000, 59.5%, when we do come back, they're back. Of that first 701,000, that dark blue section, yeah, they're coming back. If we slow up, and that's what we're looking at right now, as David said, we're looking at reports right now saying well, what will human beings do right after a pandemic? Will Americans be quick to jump back out and go to a bowl game and do those things? So then we have a section there that's orange saying, yeah, we think they're going to come back. The 9.8% is a group like the miners. They've been losing jobs for 10 years. They're going to continue. They're not coming back at all. But now the important thing that everyone understands, we only get this data once a month, and the next report is May 8th. So I can guarantee you on May 8th, every person who works at KCM is going to be working on that report. And we're going to be analyzing that report. And we're hoping at the end of the day on May 8th, we can give you the same chart with the new numbers. That will be much more reflective. How much will they change? I'm not sure. I won't know until May 8th. But we wanted to at least give you some sort of feel, like when your people say, well, all these people lost their jobs, they're never going to work again. Well, yeah, the daycare workers are. The bartenders and the people serving us are. All right, so we wanted to give you a feel for that because I thought that was important. Everyone working in a doctor's office and dentist's office, they're definitely coming back.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of things here. But again, this was for your education, the people on this call, not necessarily say, oh, good, we don't have to worry about anything. No, let's not take that stand until May 8th. Then we'll know what we have to worry about.
Yeah. That point, Steve, of looking to the future and seeing, okay, of these people that are losing their jobs and being able to deliver this, our team, and you mentioned, is working hard on that. So let's talk just a little bit, Tom, about projections going forward. And then I want to do a couple of comparisons because so many of the headlines like we're talking about are talking about, hey, we're seeing historical unemployment and comparing it to past times. So we're going to do that too. So first, let's look at what Goldman Sachs is saying right now about unemployment rate. And we chose Goldman Sachs in this scenario as a conservative measure. I'll tell you, the Congressional Budget Office thinks we'll get as high as 12%, and JP Morgan has said 8.5%. So we've taken the highest one. And again, they may update these as time goes on. I'm sure they will. But right now they're saying in 2020, we're going to see 15% unemployment across the country. So first, as we start there, let's remember that as 15% are unemployed, that means 85% are still employed, okay? And then as we move into 21, 22, and 23, we see this gradual slope down at 6 to 8% next year, and then 5 and 4% the years after. So yeah, some of that, hang around a little bit longer, but not at the level of what we're seeing this year. Because a lot of the headlines are, hey, we're seeing unemployment right now that is rivaling or going to be greater than the Great Depression. Or I talked about before, numbers that have been published in the last few weeks are double the Great Recession. So the research team at KCM went back and compared these and built this graphic, which is really telling.
Before you go there, Dave, go back to the other graphic for a second. Yep. There are two things that you worry about unemployment in the housing industry and the economy. One is the depth of that unemployment, how many people lose their job. And the next thing you have to worry about is the length of the unemployment. Is it for a short period of time? Is it for a elongated period of time? That's the difference I want everyone on this phone call to understand. We're going to get hit hard up front. We told you that the first day we were here. Buckle up, everybody. Keep your hands inside the car because we're going down fast. But again, here's another projection that's saying that, well, once we hit bottom, things are going to get better pretty quick. Now, David, because I hear people, this is going to be worse than the Great Depression of 1929, they're telling me. So let's take a look at not only the depth of the unemployment, but the length of the unemployment. Go ahead, David.
Good point. So that's the research that I was talking about that's represented here. So if we start on the left side and we look at those two things, length and depth, we see the Great Depression. We see depth there and we see length over the 30s. And we certainly have heard stories about that. We see the Great Recession. We can start to look at that and we see maybe not as much depth, but we do see some length there of that hanging around in 2009, 2010, and 2011, and that 8 or 9%.
Whoa.
Go ahead.
Some length? Some length, did you just say?
Yeah, that looks like a solid
2009,
6 years.
2010, 2011, 2012. That's a long time even for someone I'm up that this old. 4 years of people not getting their job back.
Right. No, it's a good point. I guess I look at those red numbers and say it's not what the Great Depression was, but certainly we see length there. And then we look at the current crisis and taking those numbers from JP Morgan at 15% this year, and then the scale down 6 to 8% next year, and then 5 and 4%. So visually there we can see, while very high, and nobody's debating that, it's not at the length of what we saw during the Great Depression or the Great Recession, and paints a picture of how we can put that into perspective as we get those questions and as we have those conversations.
You almost have to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably going to be a horrible analogy or metaphor, but if you were being tortured, would you take a strong torture for a short period of time, or would you take a slightly lower level of torture for 4 years? And that's the difference between these two. We're going to have some pain short term. And to be honest with you, I don't know that the housing market's going to have the pain that everyone else is going to have. We're going to have some pain for the short term, but then we're going to be okay and we're going to come out. Now, here's the bad news. Tom gave a lot of beautiful imagery about, what our grandparents and our parents did. They picked up guns to go to war. We're picking up like a channel selector. That's what we're doing. That's what they were asking us to do. So there's a beautiful imagery there of the sacrifice and the duty and the call to duty and, the honor we pay that generation because of what they did. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll make a different analogy along the same lines. I think that there are some agents somehow waiting in the housing market for the cavalry to come. I need to help everyone understand. We are the cavalry everyone else is waiting for. There is no group of people that can best impact or better impact the housing market than the realtors across this country. And there's no better, if that's the tremendous army, what we have on this call really are the special forces, the best of the best. If we don't answer this call right now, what's going to take place is we have people going through a health crisis right now. We have people, and I'm not saying the housing crisis would be, in 2008 was as bad. Back then we lost houses. Right now we're worried about losing our parents and our grandparents. So I know there's a different situation. I was born and raised in New York. I have friends and family up there right now. I understand that situation. But what we can't let happen to those families, to get a second punch in the stomach. We have to make sure that we can't handle the health crisis. We're not going to come up with a vaccine. We're not going to turn around and come up with a cure for the coronavirus. But what's going to happen next is if we don't get to work right now and stay working right now, and ladies and gentlemen, everyone's going, but no, you know what you do? Find all the people that bought Airbnb houses near you. You live on the coast of North Carolina, every one of those houses is an Airbnb. You know what all those people don't have this summer? Rent. Why don't you go out and talk to those people? Not go out and talk to them, pardon me. Why don't you find those people and have discussions with them? Because they might be looking to sell right now. Let's, again, instead of getting crazed about things, let's calm down, sit down, think, plan, act. How many, 90% of all the investment homes in this country, everyone yells about, well, the big investors are buying it. The big investors have about 4% of the rental properties in this house, in this country. 96% are owned by mom and pops, like me and you. We might decide now's the, we're not getting the rent like we did, and we got, maybe now's the time for us to liquidate our portfolio and put that cash into something else. We have to start thinking now instead of worrying. We have to start planning instead of hiding under the bed. That's what this is about. And it's not even for our commissions. It's not even for our money. If that family who lost the grandparent then has to lose their house. Man, we know the damage that was done the last time just because they lost their house. We can't let this be a double hit. Sorry, David, I got in the way of you. I apologize. Sorry.
Listen, Oracle, preach. So David, going back to that slide, let's reiterate, because we've had a lot of new people, jump on the line here. We're looking at the first 701,000 of the current unemployment rates, what that looks like. We're also looking at May 8th being the next day that we get all of the updates, and then KCM and us, we will all be pushing out that information for everybody. Remember, the game is always to see things as they are, right? To define reality and then to communicate effectively with your past clients, your sphere, your buyers, your sellers. And David, I think the graphic specifically about the Great Depression, the Great Recession, and then today is a very important piece for us to be looking at, because when you showed me that first one that just showed that straight line and then a spike,
right?
I my stomach got upset,
right?
Because it looks startling, right? And yet when you look at this and say, okay, in comparison, that 15%, that 16%, that's painful, because everyone watching right now, I'm looking at Tristan on my team. That's his wife, Stephanie. They just bought their first home, right? She falls into that group, right? My cousin, who I just talked to, who's, a senior VP of a huge company. They just said, hey, we need to furlough you, right? Wow. It's happening to our brothers, our sisters, our friends. It's happening to everybody. But the distinction is 85% it hasn't happened to.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the question is, guys, and I know you've shared this graph, and I hopefully you got it again. Do you have that graph on the interview with the CEOs of companies on how quickly they felt they could respond, how fast they felt they would bring people back? And I guess maybe, do you find that as relevant today with all the new information?
All right. Well, that's a great question, Tom. And David, I'd like to answer that question.
Yep.
That wasn't a one-time survey. They do that survey every couple of weeks. So what we found in the first survey versus the second survey is people got a little bit more conservative. It's still very powerful. All right. It's still very powerful. Well, more than 50% think they're going to be up in 90 days and running. But what we're looking at right now, as we're working our way through this, we're saying, all right, and we do have a graph we don't have available right now, but we do have a graph saying, what did they say the first week? What did they say the second week? Because at KCM, what we're trying to do is watch the trend right now.
Yeah.
Same thing that they're doing with the coronavirus, Tom. What's the trend? Is it going this way? That people are saying all these people are dying, yet Dr. Fauci's going, we might be close, ladies and gentlemen, because he knows that this is what's taking place. We will graph that every 2 weeks. We don't have it available right today, but we'll bring it next Friday. David, make a message.
Yep.
I'm not hiding it from anybody. We'll bring it next Friday and we'll show what the difference is. And probably the third week will be there. And now what we'll know is, all right, from the time the pandemic's over, how long will it take us, how wide would that bottom be? All right. Yeah. We don't believe it's going to be a U. We know it's not going to be an L. That's what we had in 2008. It went down, hit the bottom, and stayed there for 6-7 years. We know it's not going to be that. But how's that little curve at the bottom of the V, how wide is that curve going to be? That's what we're trying to figure out right now. And there are three things that go into consideration there. The length of the unemployment, which we don't think there's going to be a challenge with. When do people think they're going to come back to the Price Waterhouse graph that you're talking about, Tom? And also, now the team is studying the psychologists. What are they saying about the human condition of, hey, will I go out? Will we be wearing masks? We probably will know we're not going to be shaking hands as much anymore. But socially, what has changed now? Will we jump back into a bowl game the day the pandemic is declared over? That's what we're looking at now, because that will give you all your followers, Tom, a better understanding. A perfect understanding? No. Now, I will tell you that I don't think that's going to be bad news. I think it's going to be good news as we go across. But let's assume there's going to be times when there's some tough news. You know, there's a rule that I lived by when I ran my 550 agent real estate company. Good agents know how to deliver good news. Great agents know how to deliver tough news. I don't want any people that can only deliver the good news. I want great agents. And even the conversation we're having here, Tom, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm blowing smoke up your rear end or their rear end. All right. You have the best of the best. There's only one conference I go to every year. It's yours. It's not because of your good looks. When I get amongst that group of people, I get energized for another 12 months. You have the most special group of any other group that comes together, of agents that come together.
Thank
now, here's the challenge. Here's the challenge. It's on you. It's not on the rest of them. It's on you. So what we're saying is the entire world economy is looking to collapse. And part of the reason that's looking to collapse is because the United States economy is looking to collapse. And the only thing that could stop that is we have to bring housing back in a big way. So that's the responsibility of the people on this call. You are not just the soldiers in this, you're the generals in this. So what I just told you, in case you didn't have enough pressure already, you're responsible for bringing back the world economy.
Yeah.
That's where we're at now. Because the United States economy is not coming back, the world economy is not coming back, the United States economy is coming back. And the United States economy, the reason they're pushing so much money toward real estate related things and mortgage related things is the government knows the fastest way out of this is the people on this call, housing.
100%. So
don't
Steve,
blow it, guys.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are on the same page. I know David is too. And this has been my rallying call just for the last, 72 hours that, we need to lead. No one's handing you a gun. We're saying to you, make phone calls, send emails, communicate with people, educate people, be of service. Like that's what
Dr. Fauci from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
Get the message out.
That's right. So fellas, we've covered a lot of ground, but there is the one big question that I need to ask both of you. And David, I'm going to start with you, and then Steve, you can close it out. Look, sounds like we're in a recession.
Sure. Yeah, I think let's start here. We can say, going back to what we've talked about on this call, what do we know right now? The economy is slowing down. Businesses are slowing down. And we can wait to the traditional definition of that of 2 consecutive quarters, or we can say we are in an economic slowdown right now. Yeah. Likely when quarter 1 GDP comes out, it's negative. We know that quarter 2 GDP is going to be significantly negative. So I think it's fair to say, as we watch that, we are in the definition of a recession in an economic slowdown. Tom, I don't know how much time we have. We have some data on that and quotes. Do we have time to go through that, or how do you want to do that?
Nobody's leaving this, David. Keep going. Nobody's leaving.
So, Steve, why don't we? You want to kick that off in that conversation?
Okay. What David was trying to tell you is the 2 things, and I'm going to talk it a little bit stronger. The reason we love David is David tells you, explains to you exactly what's happening. I'm going to give it to you real. I'm much older. I don't care what you think about me. I really don't care about anything like that. We're in a recession, ladies and gentlemen, and they're going to start calling it next week.
Yep.
The definition, the technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters. So technically, the bureaucrats can't call it until we're finished with this quarter. But you know what they're going to call back then? That we were in a recession now. But now, here's the thing. Yes, we're in a recession. The next question is, what does that mean?
Bingo.
Right? That's the question. Because you're right, Tom, and David, take notes. Next week, we're going to give you all the reasons why this isn't 2008 all over again. That's what we're going to be next Friday's call, a big piece of it, if that's okay with you, Tom. We're going to go step by step by step with all the information we have to slaughter the thinking that this is anything like 2008. We'll kill that myth. But now let's take a look at the recession. David was being nice. He's saying, well, economic slowdown. He's right. People are going to say, did you see the recession news? You have to say, yeah, I agree with them. I think we are in an economic slowdown because the word recession brings back 2008. I'm not trying to do word games here. I'm taking the definition in the dictionary, the definition. It's an economic slowdown. So what I'm saying, put up that slide with the blue sky background, David. Everyone on this call has to understand this. Waiting on you, David. Recession does not equal housing crisis. In your consumers' minds, I know that it does. You have to kill that myth. Now, the way we want to do that right now is this. Let's go through them pretty quickly, David. Go to the first quote. This is from Chris Herbert, the managing director of the Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University. This is what Harvard is saying. Housing is a fundamental element of every person's well-being. And with nearly a fifth of U.S. gross domestic product rooted in house-related expenditures, it is also critical to the well-being of our broader economy. What did I just tell you? The government understands they have to support us because they didn't last time, and the country paid a price. So here's Harvard saying, hey, listen, we got to get housing moving. Next slide, David. Mark Fleming. Many still bear scars. This is what you were talking about, Tom. Many still bear scars from the Great Recession and may expect the housing market to follow a similar trajectory in response to the coronavirus outbreak. But there are distinct differences that indicate the housing market may follow a different path. While housing led the recession in 2008, 2009, this time it might be poised to bring us out of it. So now we'll go through that. We didn't bring them this time. We'll go through those things that he's talking about next Friday. Next slide. The housing sector enters this recession underbuilt rather than overbuilt. That means as the economy rebounds, which it will at some stage, housing is set to help to lead the way out. So everything we've been telling you is you're worried about a recession. Well, guess who's responsible for making sure that it doesn't become a bad recession? Who's responsible for that? Us.
All of us.
Mm-hmm.
Us. So if you have a friend, you can't do this now. You have to figure out how to do it, through Zoom. But if we were allowed to go have close personal contact, I'd go under the bed, I'd reach under there, grab them by the hair, and pull them out from underneath the bed. There are people not on this call because it's too early. They're not still in bed resting. They're hiding under their bed. We need an army of agents. We have a great special forces team. You're on this call, but we need an army to get this done. Tom is the general. He's the man, the four-star general. I know he tells me what to do. I know he tells David what to do. He tells David what to tell me what to do. That's how much power Tom has. Listen to him. This is the time that you have to make sure. That's it. And I know there are some people out there saying, well, I don't know with coaching. And ladies and gentlemen, let's make this simple. If you're worried about going forward, you're not worried about the market. You're worried about your ability. There's a quote, the bird doesn't worry about the branch breaking because its confidence, his faith is not in the tree. It's in its wings. Whatever's going to happen now, the people that are working are going to take advantage of it. They're the ones that are going to do that. So as far as coaching, I just hired 2 coaches. I need a mental coach right now. And I need a coach that can help me on the real estate side, dealing with the leaders in the real estate side. So I'm investing more money right now. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're saying that, well, I'm not sure about the economy, so I don't know if I should do coaching, this is what I'm going to tell you. You're the guy who has to have coaching. You have to, because what you're really saying is, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. Listen to Tom, please, 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 please. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't get a penny. Tom has never offered me 1 penny. When I come out and speak at somebody, doesn't even pay me for my speaking. I'm not doing this for the money.
This is a relationship, my friend. This is you and I having a sacred bond about wanting to help. So I appreciate those words. I got to ask you this. The question that's on everybody's minds is, okay, the last time we had a recession, an economic meltdown, housing prices tumbled. I was looking at a piece you guys posted just a few days ago on Instagram. And when I first read it, Steve, I couldn't help it. Maybe it's just a sign of the times. I looked at it and I said, oh my God, we expected home prices on average across the country to go up 4 point something %. And I saw 3 and it was in orange and I thought it was -3. I couldn't help it. I'm just being honest.
I get it. So let's talk about prices going forward. All right. Let's talk about home prices. We're in a recession. Let's talk about prices in a recession. Pull up the Doug Bryan slide, Dave.
Yep. Yeah.
Doug Bryan's the chief economist at the National Association of Home Builders. Now, everyone's going to say, well, he's biased. This is research. This is not his opinion. He did research. With the exception of two recessions, the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009, which was caused by a housing crash and a mortgage market meltdown. Of course, prices were affected. The Gulf War recession from 1990 to 1991, which obviously had something to do with 9/11, kind of what was happening here a little bit. No other recessions have impacted the U.S. housing market according to the Freddie Mac Home Price Index data collected from 1975 to 2018. So what we're talking about, I think that's 45 years now at 2020. Only twice in the 5 different recessions, according to Doug Bryan, the Freddie Mac Home Price Index shows us prices were impacted. Let's go to the next slide, which some of your people are familiar with. CoreLogic did the same study with their data, different set of data, and they found the same thing. Yeah, we took a beating in 2008. But in 4 of the previous 5 recessions, only once did prices go down, less than 2%. In the other 3 recessions, prices actually went up. Ladies and gentlemen, understand a recession does not mean housing crisis, but also understand that your consumers don't get that.
That's right. We
have to be out there talking about this constantly. So now, the latest on home prices moving forward, pre and post the pandemic, as far as projections are concerned, pull up the Ivy Zelman, just the pricing chart, David. Ivy Zelman came out with this, I think, 11 days ago. Because I don't know if you know, the name of our company is Keeping Current Matters. So we try to keep really current because we think it matters. That's a joke. All right, so what winds up taking place is this is what she projected. The blue bars are what she projected 2 months ago. She thought 2020 prices would go up 4.7%. She thought in 2021 they were going to go up 3.8%. She hadn't yet 3 months ago made a projection on 2022 yet. So now the new projections, and she talks to the fact that it's post-pandemic, she thinks that this year prices are going to be impacted. They're not going to go up 4.7%. They're only going to go up 3%. Next year, we'll make up some of that appreciation because she projected 3.8 next year. Now she's up above that at 4.2. And then we're going back to what we've kind of experienced over the last couple of years, 4.6. So understand that all the data we're giving you, all the research that everyone's doing, kind of points to the same thing. Buckle up, keep your arms in the car. We're in for a wild ride down, and we're going to be in a very, very exhilarating ride on the way up. And what I promise you is we will keep you abreast every week that Tom wants us here to what is, all right, you know what? They moved the bar by 2.5 feet. The same way your doctor would tell you, all right, this is where you are now. This is what I think we should do now. The same way your attorney at the day after day in court would say, all right, after just hearing those witnesses, this is where I think we are. The same way Dr. Fauci gets on every day. Now that we have this data, this is where I think we are. We will keep you abreast of that. And I pray to God that you keep your families, your friends, your relatives, your clients abreast of that.
I appreciate that, Steve. So as we wrap this up, David, closing thoughts, because we covered a lot of ground, and certainly today, I mean, each week we're bringing people a lot of value is our intent, and we know today is a heavier conversation. So, David, closing thoughts as we send people off into Easter weekend here in the U.S.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, I think, Tom, we started this off by saying, hey, we want to bring the news. We want to talk about not good news, not bad news, but the news and how to deliver it. And here's where my mind goes. I've got a quote here from Ben Bernanke, and I think it really sums up a lot of what we talked about. And it says, as he went back and looked at 2008, 10 years later in a retrospective, where we saw a lot of things coming out, a lot of things learned, he said this: my results do suggest that in the absence of the panic, the declines in employment, consumption, and output in the early stages of the Great Recession would have been significantly less severe. in the absence of panic, and I think it's speaking to what Steve said about,
Yes.
Folks that are out there, what you've said about people that have furloughed themselves, about our job now is to be out in the market with the news, being able to deliver, this is what's happening. And again, like Steve said, I've been taking notes over here about 2008, bringing the study for next week. Our goal each week as we have these conversations is to bring that to you, to bring the latest information to you.
I appreciate that. And for my friends that are watching, I know like if we were on Instagram, you could like heart this up live. And I think you can do that on Facebook. Let us know if this is bringing you value, like whether it's in the comments or texting me or sending us a DM, let us know. Like if this is bringing you value, we're going to keep doing it. That is our intent. And whether there's one of you on the line or just like, again, the last 3 shows, the last 3 weeks we've had, we're going to be at 500,000 views pretty quickly here. So our intent, it's not about the number. It's about how many people we can call to this calling right now to get out and make a difference, to help, to educate. Steve, closing thoughts, and then I'll wrap it up.
The best thing I can say is what David was saying with the panic. Ladies and gentlemen, what confusion leads to confusion leads to concern leads to fear turns into panic. Right now, I think we still got it at the confusion step. There are some people that are very fearful, but if we let it get to the panic step, then all hell breaks loose. Then it's like we have to do what we did in 2008. We have to see families hurt again. We have to see families move out of the house. Their grandfather just died in that house, and now they have to give the house away. All right? We can't let that happen to families. This is not, TV makes us to be this like, we all sell $1 million houses. We all get this big commission, and we go to the country club drinking champagne. We all know that's not true. Occasionally it's true. It's cool when it happens. We sell a big house and get a big commission. But most of the time, we're helping people through the most difficult times of their lives, whether it be divorce or death, a job transfer, or a young couple has a baby girl that's born with, challenges, medical challenges. They pick up and leave and sell their house and move to our house next to the hospital that can help that little daughter live. And they want to visit her every day. Those are the things we do. Those people are still out there. There are people right now that need to move, not want to move. Their life is dependent. Their daughter, their children, their parent, whatever the case is. Just think about just the deals you've made over the years. Those people are still out there that need us. We have to be there for them now. It's crucial.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, David. So look, my friends, as we wrap up this week in housing, I want to just go back to the first statement I made to you about, my father-in-law, World War II vet on the USS Cambria, or my Uncle Frank, who was a paratrooper who stormed the beaches, was dropped, I should say, over the beaches out of an airplane being riddled with bullets. The greatest generation, I always ask myself, like, how would they respond to this moment in time? And then I think to myself, I think we're all pretty blessed because we know a lot of really tough men and women that housing isn't this thing that we look at like, hey, it's our way to get rich quick. It is a calling for us. We recognize that we were built to serve, that where we're at our best is navigating the challenging transactions, helping buyers and sellers, helping people that need to rent, educating people every single day. Like that's what we do when we're at our best. I always go back to the study of Harvard and Chapman University right here, where they say people create sustainable happiness by doing 2 things: learning, right? Creating new ideas, learning new information, and contribution. And as we go into the Easter weekend, no matter what your faith is, I would say to you, think about how you can contribute this weekend. And whether that is to a loved one, whether it is texting a friend you haven't talked to in a while, maybe making amends with someone that you crossed paths with that you weren't comfortable, or maybe just maybe reaching out to 5 or 8 or 10 agents in the marketplace that they have mentally furloughed themselves. We need them back. You heard all the data. You heard what these guys are talking about. And I reiterate the same point. We're going to get through this together, and we need everybody out there to do their part. So as we wrap, God bless you guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday on This Week in Housing. Thank you so much.